Good afternoon, everyone. So today we'll have a look at the second section of Book 1, Canto 1. The first section told us about the darkness before the dawn, and then the coming of the dawn, and then the passing of the dawn, and the common light of earthly day. Everybody, all the forest creatures, waking up, starting on their daily routine. And leader here, with his uncertain mind, alone who stares at the future's covered face. Man lifted up the burden of his fate. And Savitri too awoke among these tribes that hastened to join the brilliant summoner's chant, and lured by the beauty of the apparent ways, acclaimed their portion of ephemeral joy. Akin to the eternity whence she came, no part she took in this small happiness. A mighty stranger in the human field, the embodied guest within made no response. The call that wakes the leap of human mind, its checkered, eager motion of pursuit, its fluttering, hued illusion of desire, visited her heart like a sweet alien note. Time's message of brief light was not for her. In her there was the anguish of the gods imprisoned in our transient human mold, the deathless conquered by the death of things. A vaster nature's joy had once been hers, but long could keep not its gold heavenly hue, or stand upon this brittle earthly base. A narrow movement on time's deep abysm, life's fragile littleness denied the power, the proud and conscious wideness, and the bliss she had brought with her into the human form. The calm delight that weds one soul to all, the key to the flaming doors of ecstasy. Earth's grain that needs the sap of pleasure and tears, rejected the undying rapture's boon. Offered to the daughter of infinity her passion flower of love and doom she gave.
This last line also seems very interesting. I'm sorry I was not at that time. Man alone.
Man lifted up the burden of his fate. Yes. The whole sentence is interesting. Man, the human race, is the leader. Although we have this uncertain mind, it's an imperfect, incomplete mind, but still humanity is the leading species here on earth. No? And we don't follow instinct like these 1,000 peoples of the soil and tree. Nature tells them exactly what they have to do. But man has his uncertain mind. And the other thing that human beings do is that they try to look into the future. It's the only species that wonders what is coming next. Alone, he stares at the future's covered face. He can't see what's coming next, but still there's that wish to do so. No? So as the day begins, humanity also, and they also wake up, the human beings, and we have to lift up this heavy load of being the leader here and having this uncertain mind and not being able to see into the future. Every morning we have to lift up the burden of our fate. Will you start, Dhanalakshmi?
Fate is a duty for bringing the creation forward. The fate is that.
We actually don't know what our fate is.
Yeah, but here what he means by that?
I think he means that although we don't know what it is, and although we feel it as a burden, often we wish that we didn't have to lift up this burden every morning. We would rather do other things, no? But still, that's what we have to do, without really knowing where it's leading us.
We have to start from the break.
Yes.
And Savitri too awoke among these tribes that hastened to join the brilliant summoner's chant, and lured by the beauty of the apparent ways, acclaimed their portion of ephemeral joy.
Yes. So everything is waking up, and Savitri too wakes up. In the forest, among these tribes, these 1,000 peoples of the soil and tree, the birds and the gibbons and all the little creatures and the big creatures too. She also awakes. And all these tribes, they are somehow joyful to wake up. They hurry to join the brilliant summoner's chant. In the morning, if we wake up among the tribes, we can hear them all singing joyfully, or calling out in the forest. The gibbons sing loudly, and the monkeys whoop, and the other animals roar and do what they have to. It's as if the whole of nature is joining into this song, the dawn chorus, it's called in English. This sound. And Sri Aurobindo says they are lured, they are attracted by the ways that they see before them, the apparent ways. And all of them are acclaiming their portion of ephemeral joy. Ephemeral means that the joy doesn't last long. It's only for a few moments. But all those animals and birds, creatures, waking up in the morning, they somehow celebrate. They acclaim their portion, their share of the joy of being alive. To acclaim, it has us, people misunderstand this line. They think that it means claim, but to acclaim is different. It's when you show your approval with a shout. You say, yes, no, good, hear, hear. You acclaim, you applaud or approve of something that is happening, to acclaim. And in the old days, kings and emperors used to be approved by the people, by acclamation. They would be asked, do you accept so-and-so as your leader? And then they would all shout, yes. It happens in the Ramayana, I think, when Lord Rama is approved as the crown prince. And it was a common ritual amongst ancient peoples. The Roman emperors were approved by acclamation. So it's interesting to see this. They are approving. They're saying, yes, another beautiful day. Yes, yes. I accept my share of this joy of being alive.
Okay, this acclamation was just a formality. I mean, it was inheritance. Like eldest son used to be the king.
Well, with the Roman emperors, it wasn't always like that. Yes. But anyway, the acclamation, it's the expression of approval. Vocal, it's expressed out loud. So that's what the dawn chorus is, if we can hear it with Sri Aurobindo's ears. It's all the creatures saying, yes, another lovely day. Yes, yes, I'm taking part in this. No?
What is summoner?
The brilliant summoner. I have a little doubt about this. It's the chant. So who is the bird who starts chanting first in the early morning? It's the cock, no? And he has these brilliant plumes, and he's the one who, in all the stories, he thinks that the sun won't come up unless he calls it. He's the summoner, no? That's one way of understanding it. Our Sanskrit expert told me that this is one of the names for the sun in himself. The sun summons us to wake up. So you can choose whichever meaning you like, or you can remember them both.
It's a capital S also.
It has a capital S. Yeah. So.
Was it a tradition that a summoner called the people to shout and acclaim?
Yes, I suppose so. Yeah. But who is this summoner? Yeah. It's not the dawn goddess. She has left. So maybe it's the sun coming up over the horizon. Here I am. Wake up, all of you. Yeah.
It's not a prayer or something, which they do in temples and things like that.
You can do some research if you like.
But when you are summoned, it's not meaning you are invited.
You are invited, yes. The sun is inviting you, no? Come here, wake up, it's time. Once I lived on a kibbutz, and there in the morning somebody used to go around every morning knocking on the door. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Summoner to tell you it's time to get up and lift up the burden of your fate, start working. We used to go straight to work at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Sadhana forest we still have it.
You still do that, yeah. So there you are. So that's what these tribes are doing. But Savitri is different, Patricia. Yes, sorry, Tom.
This sounds not so as a burden.
No,
this sounds joyful.
This is joyful. Yes, this is joyful.
It's not a burden.
This is the tribes. This is the birds and beasts, the 1,000 people of the soil and tree. Yes. For man, it's a burden, but for them, they respond joyfully and they join in the brilliant summoner's chant. That's
Tribes are not man. Tribes are not man.
Well, tribes, of course, can be human beings, but he says these tribes, so it means the ones he was referring to earlier, the 1,000 peoples of the soil and tree. the ones who are obeying the unforeseeing instant's urge. They're just living according to the urge of their nature, no? And man is distinct from that. Yeah. Patricia.
Akin to the eternity whence she came, no part she took in this small happiness. A mighty stranger in the human field, the embodied guest within made no response.
So Savitri is different. She's not following the unforeseeing instant's urge. She's akin to the eternity from which she has come. She's come from eternity to enter the human scene. So she doesn't take any part in this small happiness, this ephemeral joy, all this singing and delight. She's carrying within her an embodied guest, the divine presence. And that is a mighty stranger, a powerful stranger here in this human world. And that embodied guest doesn't make any response to all this joyful waking up. Rosa, yeah.
A call that makes the lid of human mind its checkered, eager motion of pursuit, its fluttering, huge illusion of desire visited her heart like a sweet
Alien.
note.
Yes. So you can notice in the morning, what is that call that wakes up your mind and makes you get out of bed and lift up your burden? There's a call. Something calls you. Wakes up the mind. Makes the mind leap up and think, oh, yes, I have to go. No? And the mind follows its checkered, eager motion of pursuit. It's always running after something, eagerly. And that movement is checkered. That means that is alternating dark and shade. We're running towards something that attracts us, or we're running away from something that's worrying and making us anxious, or something bad that would happen if we don't get up. And perhaps sometimes what wakes us up, what gets us up, is the thought of breakfast. The fluttering, hued illusion of desire. We want something. But it's not something permanent or something full of value. It's like a butterfly, a colored butterfly, that makes the mind run after it, follow it. So these kind of things don't touch Savitri. She's aware of these movements, but they visit her heart like a sweet alien note, something strange which is not native to her nature. And yet, because of all the love and compassion that she has for humanity and the earth, that note, although it's alien, it's also sweet, charming in some way. Martin.
Time's message of brief light was not for her. In her there was the anguish of the gods, imprisoned in our trained and human mold, the deathless, conquered by the death of things.
So, this message, the sun rising, the day coming, the time's message to us of brief light, this is not for her. In her, there was the anguish, the intense pain of divine beings who are imprisoned in the human form. Deathless beings, immortal beings who are feeling the grip of death, the deathless conquered by the death of things. That's why she doesn't join in this happiness of all the creatures around her waking up as the sun rises. So now, in the next page or so, Sri Aurobindo will tell us about this anguish, why it is there in Savitri as she wakes up. Supu?
Was the nature's joy had most been hurt, but long could keep not its gold heavenly, or stand upon this brittle earthly base.
Yes. So Savitri had once enjoyed the joy of a vaster nature, a much greater and higher state than the human state. But that joy was not able to keep its lovely golden color for long when she came to the earth. That joy could not stand firmly on this brittle earthly base, in this world of matter, this world of limitation and material form. Hue is color. It had that, her joy was filled with that golden light of heaven, but that couldn't remain long when she was here on earth. Klaus.
A narrow movement on time's deep arisen, life's fragile littleness denied the power, the crowd in conscious wideness and the bliss she had brought with her into the human form, the calm delight that weds one soul to all, the key to the flaming doors of ecstasy.
Yes. So life here on earth is little and narrow and fragile. No? And that contradicts the power and the wideness and the bliss that Savitri has brought with her when she incarnated in a human form. This is because life here is a narrow movement. It's just on the surface, a little limited movement on the surface of this deep abysm of time. Life is a small, limited movement that doesn't last long. But she'd brought with her all the confidence of a divine being, the proud and conscious wideness, and the bliss, the inherent bliss that she'd brought with her when she was born as a human being. She'd brought with her the calm delight that weds one soul to all, made her feel one with every being. That calm delight is the key to the flaming doors of ecstasy, the most intense kind of delight. We human beings are not able to experience that divine ecstasy because our nervous systems and our bodies and our consciousness very easily get excited and overstrained and are not able to keep that calm delight, which is the key to the flaming doors of ecstasy. Chandra.
Yes, that leads the state of pleasure and tears. Presented the undying lectures both, offered to the daughter of infinity. Her passion flower of love and birth she gave.
So, earth life is denying all these divine qualities that Savitri has brought with her. And that's because of the way that the earth grows. He used this word, earth's grain, that needs the sap of pleasure and tears. A grain is a seed, but it has another meaning also. Wood has a grain. If you look at the door here, you can see that the way that the tree has grown, and it's connected with the word to grow. So we use it in a psychological sense. If you're asked to do something that you find very disagreeable and against your nature, it says it goes against the grain. Carpenters, when they are working, it's much more difficult for them to cut against the grain. It's easier with the grain. So he says the way that earth grows, it needs sap. Actually, that's the way the grain is formed. These are the fibers up which the sap, the life blood of the tree is growing. He says this life blood of earth life is made up of a mixture of pleasure and tears. So that is in a way rejecting. It refuses what Savitri is offering, the boon, the gift that she's brought to earth, the gift of undying rapture. Our earth nature can't take that. It rejects it. And instead, the earth nature offers to Savitri, the daughter of infinity, a special flower, a flower of the earth, a passion flower of mixed love and doom. A passion flower, of course, is it's a name we give to a particular kind of flower. It's the flower which Mother has given the name silence. It's a very complicated flower. And in English it's been called the passion flower because people have seen in the form of this flower the symbols of Christ's suffering. The crown of thorns and the nails and the wounds. They all seem to be there in the form of this passion flower. So I think Sri Aurobindo is not referring to a particular flower. He's referring to the flower that earth offers, this suffering. Passion flower, intense delight also, and intense suffering. It means both things. Passion. There's the passion of love, and there's the passion of suffering and death. Janaka.
In vain thou seen the splendid sacrifice, the prodigal of her rich bounty, herself, and all she was, she had lent to men, hoping her greater will to implant, and in them always leaves acclimatized, that will remain in a integral, immortal soul.
Yes. So Savitri has made a splendid sacrifice by leaving her heavenly state and incarnating as a human being. And she's made that splendid sacrifice for a reason. But now, as she wakes up on this morning, it seems as if that sacrifice she has made has been in vain. What she wanted to do, well, what she did, she was a prodigal of her rich divinity. A prodigal is a person who doesn't keep anything for themselves. They just spend everything over generously. She hasn't held on to anything for herself. She's given all her rich divinity away. She's given herself and all she is to men, to human beings, hoping that she could implant her greater being on earth in humanity and acclimatize her greater nature here on earth so that heaven might grow native on mortal soil. In the early days of Auroville, when it was more or less a desert, there were not many plants that would grow here. But people kept trying to bring especially beautiful flowers. For instance, the tree of divine grace. It's a kind of hibiscus, and there are many other kinds of hibiscuses. So in this sandy desert, people put manure and compost and water, and they got certain plants to acclimatize so that now they grow easily here. It took some time. I've heard from people who were planting trees at that time, that at first they didn't survive. But with persistence, after some time, the plants grew acclimatized to this climate and this soil, and now they grow without any difficulty here. So that's what she wanted to do. She wanted to implant something of her divine nature in human beings so that it would be fixed here, that it would be acclimatized and grow here in a native way. But that seems as if it hasn't worked. In vain now seemed the splendid sacrifice. Mila.
Hard is it to persuade Earth's natural strength. Mortality bears in the eternal stars. It fears the pure divine intolerance of that assault of ether and of fire. It murmurs at its sorrowless happiness, almost with pain repels the light it brings. It trembles as its naked power of truth and the might and sweetness of its absolute voice.
Yes. Mortality, our earth nature that is in the grip of death, finds it very difficult to bear the touch of the eternal and the infinite. Our nature fears that pure divine intolerance, that divine nature which demands purity. It won't tolerate imperfection. So that touch of the eternal seems like an attack on our mortal nature, an attack by ether, the purest, rarest, subtlest form of substance, and fire, the intensity of that touch. It's too much for our mortal nature to bear. And the mortal nature responds by complaining, murmuring. It means complaining. To murmur can mean to speak in a low voice, so you can't be heard clearly. But very often when you are speaking in a low voice like that, it's because you're saying something that you're afraid other people will hear. You're complaining, you're grumbling. So our nature murmurs at that sorrowless happiness, the kind of sorrowless happiness that Savitri was offering. And it responds with violence, it repels, it pushes away that light that the divine touch brings, almost with hate. Oh, it's so awful. It trembles, it feels fear at its naked power of truth and the might and sweetness of its absolute voice.
What is the soul of ether? Or fire, understand it.
Ether. Ether is that substance which is more rarefied than our air. So we can't breathe it. It's the rarest, purest kind of substance.
But this is the two of the 5 elements.
Yes, these are two.
Fire
These are the ones that are most difficult for us to bear. Earth we are acquainted with. Water we know about. Air we know about. But fire, that burns you. And ether, you can't breathe it. It's too fine and too rare. Too pure. It's the purity that bothers us. That bothers our mortality.
Is the expansion also? The ether is the expansion, is
the vastness, yes, the limitlessness. So these are things that are unnatural to us, not to our mortality. Joel, would you read?
Inflicting on the heights the abysm below, it sullies with its mire heaven's messengers. Its storms of fallen nature are defense. It turns against the Saviour's hands of grace. It meets the sons of God with death and pain.
Yes. So our mortality, sullies with its mire, its dirty mud. It's as if we throw mud on heaven's messengers, the ones who come to bring that touch of the eternal. And it has its thorns, like a rose has thorns. Probably you know the story of The Little Prince by Saint-Exupéry. He's worrying about his planet where he's left his rose, and he says, she has only her thorns to protect her. No? So it's like that. Our thorns of fallen nature, of our undivine nature, are our defense. We turn them against those Saviour hands of grace. We prick them and hurt them. Our mortality responds to the sons of God. It gives them death and pain. All this it's doing, beings have come from the heights, but when they come to the earth nature, our mortality, inflicts on them the law of the abyss, these lower levels of nature where we are living. So they no longer are protected by the laws of the heights. They have to suffer the laws of the abysm.
These are not necessarily the is it the resistances that we feel?
Of course.
And it's
Sorry?
yes. I have a sense. Why? Why do we do that?
Why do we do that?
Or why does these things?
Yes, it's too much for us. We can't bear it. Hmm? All that ether and fire and that demand for purity, and we say, no, I'm human. Leave me alone. Yeah. And almost with hate. So that's why then in a crowd, if somebody comes and shows you all your weaknesses and your impurities, then the whole crowd will turn against them and burn them or stone them.
We don't know it.
We do it instinctively. It's the mortality in us.
And also, absence is important. Even our lowest nature responds to the heavenly messenger. Right?
Yes.
Not our normal good nature, but absence of human nature.
Yes. Yes.
All the negativities.
Because that's where the pressure is coming for change, no? On the abysm.
But if someone is not if I show my weakness, if someone's show to me his weakness, and I don't want to be involved in his weakness, what should I do? Like be in silence, just be there, or to react? I don't know. What is the way to?
I'm not interested to tell you the way. I mean, the automatic. He's describing the automatic reaction of our lower humanity when something higher comes. No, the reaction is.
Yeah, but during the study this wisdom, what is the way to react? To react, not to react.
Well, let's read on a little bit. Okay. 2 more sentences. Sergei.
The glory of lightnings dwells on the earth soon. Their sun clouds fading, darkened by ignorant minds. Their were betrayed, their root to evil turned. The cross, their payment, for the crown they give. Only they leave behind, as plain with me.
So we've observed this happening again and again in human history. No? The messengers come, a glory of lightnings, they cross the earth scene, they light things up, but when they've gone, then their sunful thoughts start fading. We can't remember them, we can't hold them in our consciousness. They get darkened by our ignorant minds. And as a result, their work gets betrayed. Humanity can't fulfill all those wonderful indications that were given. And even their good gets turned to evil. We see this so much in religions that have been led by great prophets. It just gets turned around and is no longer something heavenly, but something dreadful. Lela. I have to explain 3 more lines? That's what I said.
The cross, their payment.
Oh, the cross, their payment. Yes. Well, this is a reference to Christ. He's a kind of representative of this higher being who has been rejected by humanity. He's not the only one, but it's an example. No? So they have come to give a heavenly crown, but they get repaid by our lower human nature. They have to suffer the cross. So all that's left of their teachings and their influence is a splendid name. We remember these great beings, but what has become of their sacrifice? And it's summed up in the next 2 lines, Lela.
Fire has come and touched
men's hearts and gone. If you had caught flame and risen to greater life.
Yes. So in answer to Sivan's question, I can say that that's what one should aim to be, among the few who have caught flame and risen to greater life.
To be what?
Among the few who have caught flame and risen to greater life, who've given a positive response to that touch. So there have always been some. A few have caught flame and risen to greater life. We'll stop there today.
Shraddhavan, I have questioned the last line. Only the leader behind the splendid name is only living in the glory of name. But I don't really understand this.
Well, we can think of the splendid names. We can think of Lord Krishna, we can think of Buddha, we can think of Christ. There's the 10 avatars, no? We remember their names with reverence and respect. But how living is their influence for us? And particularly on this day, as Savitri wakes up, to her, this great sacrifice that she has made seems to her to have been in vain. But we'll have to read to the end of the canto to find out why she feels like that.
The end of this canto?
Yes.
No.
But this is before Shraddhavan died. The day that he's going to die.
That's why it is. She's waking up on the day when Shraddhavan must die.
I learned the yoga as she asked it before. The preparation.
Yes, he's beginning the story in the middle, no, near the climax. And then there's going to be, at the beginning of Canto 3, there's going to start an enormous flashback that goes back to before Savitri was born, when King Aswapati starts his tapasya. And we come back to this point in the first lines of Book 8, the Book of Death, because this is the day when Shraddhavan will die. And there's a certain similarity in the lines. It's interesting when we look at them, because Book 8 is very, very little changed from the first version that Sri Aurobindo wrote starting in 1916, maybe up to 1924 or 25. Very early versions. Book 8. It's only he added 18 lines in the late 1940s. But otherwise it's all from that earliest version. But all this he's added in between.
Which one is the meditation of Savitri?
Book 7.
Book 7 is the meditation.
Yes, it's called the Book of Yoga. And in Sri Aurobindo's version, it's shown as happening over the months from her marriage to Shraddhavan up to the day of his death. And then even her yoga continues after that, up to the middle of Book 11. But in between we have this amazing yoga of King Aswapati. Yes, Andres.
In the last line, how do you pronounce the word? It's risen or rising?
Risen. But it's from the verb to rise. Yeah? Rise, rose, risen. So shall we read? Those who wish to read. And Savitri too awoke among these tribes that hastened to join the brilliant summoner's chant, and, lured by the beauty of the apparent ways, acclaimed their portion of ephemeral joy. Akin to the eternity whence she came, no part she took in this small happiness. A mighty stranger in the human field, the embodied guest within made no response. The call that wakes the leap of human mind, its checkered, eager motion of pursuit, its fluttering hued illusion of desire, visited her heart like a sweet alien note. Time's message of brief light was not for her. In her there was the anguish of the gods imprisoned in our transient human mould, the deathless conquered by the death of things. A vaster nature's joy had once been hers, but long could keep not its gold heavenly hue, or stand upon this brittle earthly base. A narrow movement on time's deep abysm, life's fragile littleness denied the power, the proud and conscious wideness, and the bliss she had brought with her into the human form. The calm delight that weds one soul to all, the key to the flaming doors of ecstasy. Earth's grain that needs the sap of pleasure and tears rejected the undying rapture's boon, offered to the daughter of infinity her passion flower of love and doom she gave. In vain now seemed the splendid sacrifice. A prodigal of her rich divinity, herself and all she was, she had lent to men, hoping her greater being to implant, and in their bodies' lives acclimatize, that heaven might native grow on mortal soil. Hard is it to persuade earth nature's change. Mortality bears ill the eternal's touch. It fears the pure divine intolerance of that assault of ether and of fire. It murmurs at its sorrowless happiness, almost with hate repels the light it brings. It trembles at its naked power of truth and the might and sweetness of its absolute voice. Inflicting on the heights the abysm's law, it sullies with its mire heaven's messengers. Its thorns of fallen nature are the defense it turns against the Saviour hands of grace. It meets the sons of God with death and pain. A glory of lightnings traversing the earth scene, their sun thoughts fading, darkened by ignorant minds. Their work betrayed, their good to evil turned, the cross their payment for the crown they gave. Only they leave behind a splendid name. A fire has come and touched men's hearts and gone. A few have caught flame and risen to greater life.